Shalom, everyone. In this video, we're going to have a very advanced Kabbalistic disquisition on some of the greatest, or just really two of the greatest, Jewish Grandmaster Qabbalists that believed in Yeshua as HaMashiach. Now, we will begin in medieval Europe, where we see historically that in this time period, we have the most Jewish converts to Christianity, meaning in medieval Europe, this time period of medieval Europe has the greatest number of Jewish converts to Christianity. Why? Because Christianity during this time period is in a fervor, and it's evangelical and missionary actions are just very, very great. So great that many Jews are coming to the truth and are converting over to Christianity. Yes, there are some that have been forced, but there is also a large percentage of Jews that are converting because their eyes are being opened. Now, the vast majority of these Jewish converts that are having their eyes open to the truth are mostly Rabbanim and Qabbalists, specifically mostly Qabbalists. So the vast majority of Jewish converts to Christianity in medieval Europe were some of the most highly initiated Qabbalists, okay? And the reason that we don't know about much of this, it is touched upon briefly in many of the historical records and books, but the reason many people don't know this, besides the fact that they don't really study history, is that many of these Jews were expunged from the official Jewish records, okay? And it's just the way, that, most, the Jewish rabbinical order and the Orthodox Jews, whenever a Jew, converts to Christianity, they completely excommunicate him and basically wipe any trace of his existence off of their records. That's just their method of operation, okay? But if you search the historical records, you can read about some of these very, very famous, highly initiated Kabbalistic Jews coming over and converting to Christianity. And, as an example, one of the most famous, Kabbalistic, rabbis or masters that ended up converting to Christianity was a Sephardic Jew known as Abner of Burgos. And many of these Kabbalistic Jews were behind the writing of many highly, Kabbalistic treatises, that proved that indeed Yeshua is HaMashiach, with the proofs from the Torah, the Midrashim, the Talmudim, and as well as the Kabbalistic, treatises. So here you have Christian Kabbalists coming together with Jewish Kabbalists, writing books, proving without a shadow of a doubt that Yeshua is HaMashiach from the ancient Midrashim, the Talmudim, and the Kabbalistic books, etc. And so this is what's going on in medieval Europe. It's very intriguing. It's very, very fascinating. To read about in the historical records, what was going on. It's really fascinating, and it's just really sad that much of this knowledge has been lost, and most people don't really study their history and the history of these matters, which are of the highest relevance. Now, it needs to also be understood, if you are an adept or an initiate, is that you'll understand that HaKabbalah is basically where Christianity and Judaism unite. HaKabbalah essentially is the key to uniting both houses, Beit Ephraim and Beit Yehuda. And, this is what is unfortunately not known, or it's just unfortunately what is not known amongst most Christians and Jews. Only us initiates and adepts know that HaKabbalah is the key to uniting both houses. It is what is going to unite Beit Ephraim and Beit Yehuda when all of the lay Jews and all of the lay Christians, spiritually advance to where they should be. Then this will be understood by everyone. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. But the good news is that the process has begun, most especially through individuals like myself. So it's very important, to just put this matter in historical context and understand that medieval Europe was the starting point for the Renaissance period and for the explosion of a lot of great knowledge and wisdom on many matters, not just theosophical matters. So now we're going to proceed to reveal the first, Grandmaster Kabbalist who believed in Yeshua as HaMashiach. And his name is Rab Moshe David Vaye. And he lived in the late 1700s, and he was actually a teacher to Rab Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who is also known as the Ramchal. Now, unfortunately, there are certain sources that actually indicate that Moshe David Vaye was actually student of the Ramchal. Okay, but actually, if you look into the matter much more closely and deeper, you will realize that actually the Ramchal was actually was a student, or he could even be said a disciple of Moshe David Vaye. The Ramchal greatly esteemed and revered Moshe David Vaye, so much so that he actually went on record stating, to go as far as that, Moshe David Vaye was actually Mashiach ben David. And indeed, this Rab is probably one of the most initiated, or very close to being the most initiated Kabbalists of at least the past, 500 years easily. So that's very significant in of itself. Now, the Ramchal is one of the most famous and most well-studied has been one of the most famous and well-studied Kabbalists of the past 300 years. He is highly revered and studied by practically all, true, serious Jewish Kabbalists. And so this is a highly significant matter because he's a contemporary and student of Rab Moshe David Vaye. So understand that this is a highly, highly significant matter. What we are doing here when we are speaking of Rab Moshe David Vaye is an extraordinarily highly initiated Kabbalist. Okay? Now let us proceed into actually reading what he has to say about Yeshua HaNatzeri. In one of his books entitled Sefer Yikutim, which is the Book of the Gatherings, in page 83, and this is my own personal English translation of the underlying Hebrew, he states, "The bastard was right to be Mashiach ben Yosef." And then he quotes Talmud Babli, Seder Nezikim, Mishnah Horaoth, chapter 3, verse 8, which states, "For the bastard of the sages precedes the high priest who is unlearned." But he himself caused it because of his breaches. Now, I have to pause here for a second because the underlying Hebrew word there is parizut, which comes from which has a root meaning of breach, but it can also signify licentiousness. Now, I have translated as breach of his breaches rather than as his licentiousness because in context, it doesn't make sense to translate it as licentiousness, as we will see here very shortly. Okay, and it is known that Yeshua was known to have made many breaches from the perspective of the ancient Jewish rabbanim in many of the things that he said and did. So contextually, to me at least, it makes more sense to translate that word as breaches rather than licentiousness. Although both may seem plausible to your average Jewish Kabbalist. Nevertheless, he states, but he himself caused it because of his breaches, and furthermore because of the baseless hatred in Israel, and therefore blemish was changed to stranger. He was corrupted and fell from the yesod of holiness to the yesod of the klippah, right? Here, yesod designates the ninth emanation, which is a masculine emanation, okay? And there are two aspects to this emanation, as any Kabbalist would know. And here he is saying that while his original root and source was in the divine yesod, because of the evil state and condition of that generation in Israel at that time, they ended up changing this. They ended up changing the nature of Mashiach, in a sense, in a Kabbalistic mystical way, to being associated with the Yesod of the Klippah, or the demonic realm, essentially. Okay? The point here is, in this passage, he is explicitly stating that Yeshua is indeed Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay? And really, that's the seal. That's all that needs to be said. Although he makes much more advanced Kabbalistic statements to this regard that I don't really want to get into at this time. I think they would go beyond the ken of this video. The point here, as I just stated, is that in this passage he is explicitly stating that Yeshua is Mashiach ben Yosef. And any sage, any Rab, any Kabbalist understands the full implications and ramifications of this statement alone. Okay? But allow me to reveal another passage of his on the same topic. He states in page 242 of the same book, he states, for Mashiach ben Yosef makes war, and Mashiach ben David comes to make peace in the world and not war. As such, Yeshua the Nazarite said of himself, I came not to make peace in the world, but war. And he's, of course, referencing here Luke chapter 12, 51, and Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. Showing that this Kabbalist was well read in the New Testament, to say the least. He goes on, and also he was certainly the secret of Mashiach ben Yosef, although he was a bastard, for a bastard of the sages precedes an unlearned high priest, but it was not then the right time, for there was baseless hatred in Israel, and therefore he was corrupted and grasped by Samael, who destroyed him, and he was crucified. Again, he understands, as a highly initiated Kabbalist, a true fully, and the emphasis is on the word fully here, because indeed he is a fully initiated Kabbalist. He understands that in that generation there was a lot of baseless hatred in Israel. Absolutely, because the leading Jewish scholars and Rabbanim couldn't accept Yeshua HaMashiach for who he was. As a result of the perversity and evil of that generation, Samael was able to grasp Mashiach and kill him and crucify him. It was all as a result of Israel's wickedness, perversity, and evil in that generation. They are the ones that are responsible and caused the death of Mashiach ben Yosef. Right? Our ancient sages in the ancient Midrashim, they ask a profound question. They say, why was Israel exiled into Egypt? Why were we slaves and exiled into Egypt? The great Kabbalistic mystery, as they reveal it, is that it was because Yehuda and his brethren rejected and exiled Yosef, their brother, into Egypt. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, measure for measure. It was done to them. Because they did not repent for what they did to Yosef, their brother, in despising him, rejecting him, and attempting to kill him. So they were exiled into Egypt and punished under the dominion of the kingdom of Egypt. Likewise, they repeated this sin that they had not repented for in the generation of Yeshua HaMashiach. Yosef was a prototype for what was going to happen. And what did they do? They rejected, despised, and killed Mashiach. To who? To the Romans. Measure for measure. As a result, the Jews were exiled under the Roman Empire, subjugated under the Roman Empire, and exiled. It's all just a repetition of history. Understand this great Kabbalistic mystery very well. But allow me to proceed even further here. Now, there is a concealed manuscript that Rab Moshe David Vayo wrote. It's called Sette Giorni della Verità, which is Italian, because this Kabbalist was born and lived in Italy alongside Ramchal, who was also an Italian Kabbalist. Now, this concealed manuscript, has been hidden for quite a while. I don't think many people know about it. And this citation that I'm about to read here comes from Billy Phillips. Billy Phillips is a Rab from the Kabbalah Center, who I have a tremendous amount of respect and honor for. I highly revere this Rab. I understand that there are what some would say there are some very unkosher elements, in regards to the Kabbalah Center. There are certain aspects of the Kabbalah Center that are not very kosher, okay? But despite all of that, what can be said is that Rab Billy Phillips represents an aspect of the Kabbalah Center that is kosher. In other words, Rab Billy Phillips is a highly initiated Kabbalist. And I have a tremendous amount of respect and honor for him and all of his work that he does. A lot of holy work. In fact, he spent, according to himself, over 5 years trying to get a hold of this manuscript and reading it and getting to all of the juicy parts dealing, with the Kabbalah and Yeshua. Okay? So we all owe a tremendous amount of gratitude and thanks to this Rab for uncovering this passage from this concealed manuscript, okay, which was written by Rab Moshe David Vayo. Now, in this manuscript, this is what he states regarding Yeshua. He states, there was a whole fabrication on the danger of the teachings of this man Yeshua. This was created with false dogmas and was done in a disgusting way. The result is that many nations would come to know Elohim through him, and now we must repair those mistakes. The children of Israel refused to believe that Elohim's power flowed through Yeshua and that he had come to redeem the Goyim, and the Christians refused to believe that everything came from the one El, the only light. There has been a lot of misinformation and confusion about the true reason why Yeshua was killed. This was done in order to establish conflicts, unrest, and quarrels. This conflict between the two times has in fact no basis. And so my fellow brothers and sisters, we see here as explicit as it gets from one of the most, if not the most, initiated Kabbalists of the past 2,000 years. What he has to say here, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. So with that said, let us proceed now to what I consider to be, and many would agree with me on this point, to be one of the most fascinating and intriguing Kabbalists of the past 2,000 years. I speak of the Grandmaster Abraham Abulafia. Now, of all the Jewish Kabbalists of the past 1,000 years, I would say that there is no Jewish Kabbalist who had more to say on Yeshua than this Kabbalist. He lived in the late 1200s, and he actually claimed to be Mashiach and a prophet. And he had many prophetic visions and many revelations and visions from Elohim, the living Elohim. And even more interestingly, many of his disciples actually ended up converting to Christianity and believed in Yeshua HaMashiach. This is what makes this Kabbalist very intriguing and very fascinating. In fact, he has a book called Sefer HaOr, which is Hebrew for the Book of the Sign, in which he explicitly states that he received many dreams and visions from the living Elohim in regards to future prophecy, and he was told by Elohim to write this book, which detailed his dreams, visions, and prophecies. So, essentially, all in all, this was an extraordinarily highly initiated Kabbalist and prophet. Okay? And please do remember that the Hebrew word Mashiach simply means an anointed one. Okay? So let's not get too all caught up, especially if you're a baby or ignorant Christian, okay, and thinking that these figures who are claiming to be Mashiachim are antichrists in any way, form, or fashion. Because that would be stupidity on anyone's part who would say such a thing, especially without a knowledge of the entire facts. So, there seems to be a lot of confusion in regards to Abraham Abulafia's statements on Yeshua, okay? There have been leading scholars that have read and studied all of his works and written books upon his works. And essentially what makes the matter very confusing is that in his books, Abraham Abulafia seems to make what appears to be disparaging statements towards Christianity and Yeshua. However, he also makes some very, very powerful, positive, and divine statements, towards Christianity and Yeshua. Okay? And if you were to read all of his works, especially all of the citations in regards to Christianity and Yeshua, you would end up being confused because it seems that he is contradicting himself in many places. In fact, many scholars have gone as far as to clearly state that he contradicts himself in many places in his works. Okay, and this is what caused all of this confusion. So, as a scholar, right, as a disciple of truth, we need to very carefully examine and scrutinize his writings in the original Hebrew, and we need to ask very profound, relevant questions with respect to his writings. Right, we need to ask, right. Is this a clever way of encoding his book? Were these disparaging statements added after the fact by the editors or the censors? Or is it just that he was a bipolar schizophrenic mystic, as some might believe? We want to know the truth. What is the truth in regards to this matter, right? We need to understand that he lived in the late 1200s. So we need to put things first into historical context. The late 1200s was the first generation where it was decreed by Ha Elohim that the holy mysteries were to be revealed to the Jews. Before that period, the holy mysteries were carefully concealed among a handful of the most initiated Rabbanim. But it was in that generation that the most initiated Grandmaster Jewish Kabbalists and saints and prophets decreed, we are now for the first time going to carefully redact the holy mysteries, put them into writing, and release them to the Jews. Okay? And Abraham Abulafia lived during this generation. In fact, there are even some scholars and Kabbalists that believe that Abraham Abulafia was the redactor of the Zohar and many of the principal Kabbalistic treatises that emerged from that time period, because he was a Sephardic Jew after all. Okay? And is this the truth? I really don't know. I haven't prayed or meditated upon this matter, but let's just say it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, especially given if you know who Abraham Abulafia really is, it wouldn't be too much of a surprising statement, to say the least. Okay? So that's one aspect, right? And then another aspect is, again, contextually, historically, at that time, this is the time where we have the most Jewish converts, most of them being Qabbalists and Rabbanim, converting to Christianity and seeing the truth. Okay? Likewise, at the same time, we also have, the censoring of many books. At this time, many governments in Europe are censoring many Jewish texts. There are also Jewish, masters and merchants, etc., that are also, or editors, I should really say, they're actually Jewish editors at that time that are also censoring certain Jewish texts. As an example, by the time you get to the 1500s, you already start to see the censoring of certain Kabbalistic treatises. As an example, Chaim Vital's one of his treatises is entitled Sha'arei Kedusha, Gates of Holiness, was censored by the editor. There's a point in the book where Chaim Vital is going to reveal some very powerful esoteric wisdom, and it was censored from the editor because the editor stated that this wisdom was just too powerful and too dangerous to get out, and so it was censored. Okay, and you have Christians censoring Jewish, books like the Talmud, etc. So you have many editors that are censoring and manipulating texts at that time as well. Okay, so when we put this entire matter in context, we need to understand that there's a lot going on in this generation, this time period. It's a very I can't find the word that I can't seem to locate the word that I'm trying to use here, but it's a very I almost want to say it's a very tumultuous period, of medieval Europe, especially in Spain at that time, and this needs to be understood. So when you put all of this in context, right, it becomes difficult to sort out the truth and figure out what exactly is going on here, in this entire matter. Okay, but we'll get a little bit more clarification as I proceed here. Okay, so we need to dive deeper into context here regarding this matter. Okay, so one extremely relevant context that needs to be understood for fully comprehending this matter is that many Grandmaster Kabbalists, like the Rambam and the Arizal, etc., practically all of the most initiated Kabbalists were anti-Rambam or Maimonides. They were against Maimonides, and for good reason. Because Rambam, was a rationalist, and his writings evince in many places that he indeed was not a fully initiated Kabbalist. This is a fact. Strictly based on his writings, it is evinced that, one, he was a rationalist and anti-Kabbalah. Or not anti-Kabbalah, but at the very least, he was not a fully initiated Kabbalist. This is easily evinced from his writings alone. Okay? And we must also understand that you can't always fully judge a Rab or a character simply based upon his writings. Okay? But if we are to do so, we can state unequivocally that he was a rationalist, and he most definitely was not a fully initiated Kabbalist. Okay? This is a fact. Okay? However, part of what makes Abraham Abulafia an extremely intriguing and fascinating individual, okay, understand Abraham Abulafia is a very perspicacious and sagacious individual is that he goes against all the Kabbalists of that period and states, no, you're all wrong. Rambam, that is Maimonides, actually was an extraordinarily highly initiated Kabbalist. And his writings are actually encrypted and encoded. And unless you're a Kabbalist who is as highly initiated up to the levels that I'm at, or higher, you're not going to know this. And many of Abraham Abulafia's treatises are concerned with demonstrating that indeed Maimonides was a highly initiated Kabbalist. Okay? And we also need to understand, moreover, that Abraham Abulafia's writings are full of codes. And that Abraham Abulafia was modeling his writings after this secret code, right? What he's saying is that Maimonides wrote his works through a secret code. These writings are encoded and encrypted. Nobody seems to know that Maimonides had encrypted his writings, and that indeed Rambam was a highly initiated Kabbalist. Abraham Abulafia follows this as a prototype. First of all, his writings are full of codes, okay, which makes his writings encoded. By definition, that makes his writings encoded and encrypted. And it may be then said that Abraham Abulafia was writing in such a manner as to encode or encrypt the fact that he believed in Yeshua, and so that everyone who read his works would believe that he doesn't believe in Yeshua when in fact he did believe in Yeshua. In other words, anyone who would read Abraham Abulafia's writings would be led to believe or confused that he does not believe in Yeshua, when in fact he does, because his writings are encoded to a point where unless you know who he really is, unless you're highly initiated, you're not going to know that he believes in Yeshua as HaMashiach. Okay? Just as anyone who's reading Rambam and is not initiated doesn't know that Rambam is actually pro-Kabbalah and is a highly initiated Kabbalist. Okay? Alright? So again, when we go deeper into context, we need to understand this, that what we're dealing here with is the Magi, or the true magicians, like myself. Okay? Practically everyone believes that Shaul the Apostle is anti-Torah. Right? I would say over 99% of Christians foolishly and ignorantly believe that Shaul is anti-Torah. But there are a few elect, a few wise, I like to call some of them magicians, who know that this is actually false, and that actually he is pro-Torah, right? We holy initiates and adepts know that Shaul the Apostle is an extraordinarily, ridiculously initiated Kabbalist, of an extraordinarily high intellect. And as a result, his writings are easily misunderstood and misinterpreted. And unless you are a highly initiated Kabbalist, such as myself, you won't really fully understand what Shaul is really saying in his writings. Okay? Likewise, Abraham Abulafia is saying the same thing about the Rambam. He's saying the Rambam is a closet Kabbalist. He is sworn to secrecy. Because Rambam lived during the 1000s. He lived before the 1200s. All Kabbalists were sworn to secrecy. And the Kabbalah was entirely esoteric. It was only known by a few chosen select. Okay? And he's saying Rambam was one of them. And he kept this highly guarded. But if you read his writings carefully, as an initiate and an adept, you will know that he's a highly initiated Kabbalist. The problem is that everyone else who's reading him are not fully initiated Kabbalists, and they don't know it because they're not at our level of initiation. That's what Abraham Abulafia is stating. Okay? And Abraham Abulafia is employing the same methods that Shaul and the Rambam are employing. They are writing in such a way to confuse the masses, purposefully. It is the method of operation of all Kabbalists. Yeshua did it. Yeshua spoke in parables, and his method of operation was to speak and act in such a way that it would confuse the masses, and in some cases have the masses consider him a heretic. Shaul is following that same method of operation as a highly initiated Kabbalist, and Rambam, according to Abraham Abulafia, is also following that same method of operation. Likewise, Abraham Abulafia, being at that level of high initiation, also follows that method in his writings and in his treatises, as we will see here shortly. Okay? Meaning that practically all Kabbalists who read Abraham Abulafia will probably be foolish and ignorant enough to think that he's anti-Yeshua, when in fact he is pro-Yeshua, as we will see here shortly. So let us begin with the positive statements that Abraham Abulafia makes towards Yeshua and Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
So let us begin. So I don't have it here. I actually forgot to put the title of the book that I'm quoting from here, but the name of the book that I'm citing these citations from is called Sefer Maftiach HaChochmoth, which is Hebrew for the Key of Wisdoms. And these translations here, these English translations that I'm providing here are my own English translations of the underlying Hebrew text. So I want to stress that. But on page 48 to 49 of this book, Maftiach HaChochmoth, he states, the Christians say that Mashiach said to them with his disciples that Sefer HaTorah is true and it was right to honor him and his words are of the living Elohim, but that there are a few commandments in it that are not to be taken literally. This is because the elders and the Qabbalists knew them easily, for they were using a clever strategy to lure the heart of the fools to HaTorah rather than binding them in chains. In order to make it easier for those who do not know the essence of the evil inclination to accept the knowledge of them that they desire the truth for them. Without a doubt, there are from the Christians a few sages who know the secret, and they spoke to me the secret and revealed it to me that it is their knowledge without a doubt. And then I judged them as the most pious of the nations of the world. And one should not be concerned with the words of fools of any nation, for HaTorah was not given but to the masters of knowledge. Now, here we can see from the statement that Abraham Abulafia, as part of the fervor and tumult that was going on in this generation, was rubbing shoulders with a lot of Christians, and not just any Christians, but very highly initiated Christians, and even highly initiated Jewish Christians for that matter. Okay? Now, what he's saying here in context is that, here he's having discussion with Christians who are saying, hey, what do you have against, Yeshua? He, kept the Torah, and, he taught the entire Torah, essentially, that it must be obeyed, except for a few commandments. He's referring here to what the Christians foolishly and ignorantly state, which is that the ceremonial commandments and laws have been done away with by Yeshua. They're not to be taken literally, essentially. And Abraham Abulafia, being an extremely highly initiated Kabbalist, says, hey, listen. I understand what you're saying, okay? There's really no way that if what you're saying is true, that Yeshua said that, some of the commandments have been done away with, right? That's not what really is going on. These Christians who are saying this, that Yeshua said that that there's a few commandments that are not to be taken literally, it's just foolishness. Because Yeshua was a highly initiated Rab and Kabbalist, and there's no way any Rab or Kabbalist would say that. What's really going on is that in order to introduce holiness and the Torah and to begin the process of initiation into it, he's using this clever strategy whereby which he will say, let's focus on the easy commandments and have them do those first, and then we'll tell them the truth is that all the commandments must be kept. But by the time they are keeping the easy commandments and the first commandments, they'll then be ready spiritually to take on the more advanced commandments, right? Because you can't just initiate, a Gentile fully into the Torah overnight. He would be overburdened. It's a gradual process of initiation that takes place, right? This is what the Jerusalem Council understood and was saying in the book of Acts, right? There is a standard, correct process of initiation, which begins with the Noahide covenant and progresses to the entire, Mount Sinai covenant. Okay, and he understands this very well, being a highly initiated Kabbalist, and he's saying this is what is actually going on. And then he states there are some very highly initiated Christians who know what I'm saying is true, and they've told me this. They says we have the same understanding, the same advanced understanding that you have. We have it. And so then he's saying, indeed, verily, verily, these Christians are extremely initiated, and it is very well that they are among the pious of the nations of the world. Okay, that's what's going on in context. So this is very fascinating, to say the least, because here, right, he is revealing some very advanced understandings between, advanced Judaism and advanced Christianity. So this is very highly significant, okay? But the real seal, the real grand seal that Abraham Abulafia believed in Yeshua as Mashiach, okay, is that in the same book, in page 125, he states this. He says, and the seal of the 6th day is Yeshua HaNatzeri, but the seal of the 7th day is half of the name, which is the power of King Mashiach. The implications and the ramifications of this statement just alone are beyond amazement, to say the least. Okay, here essentially he is equating Yeshua with the 6th day. Now, if you're a Kabbalist and you understand the entire Kabbalistic significance behind the 6th day, you understand that this is a very powerful statement that he's making. He's also equating the 6th day with half of the Tetragrammaton. He's saying the 7th day is half the Tetragrammaton and the 6th day is the other half. So now he's equating Yeshua with divinity, a very powerful, holy, divine figure, because the 6th day here, according to this statement, is being equated with half of the Tetragrammaton. The 6th day represents Adam Kadmon, who is the son of God, the image of God, the holy image of God. This is big. Now, again, we have to put things into historical context. If you were part of the rabbinical order in that generation, okay, and you're reading a book like this, what do you do? Now, I will tell you because I was an Orthodox Jew for a season, okay, so I know how they think very well. If there is a Rab and he writes a book and he makes many disparaging statements about Yeshua, that's fine. But if he introduces one positive statement about Yeshua, that's not fine. Especially if he introduces a powerful divine statement as Abraham Abulafi is making here. In other words, if a Rab writes a book and he makes this statement about Yeshua that he just made here, that I just read to you, I don't care how many other statements he has disparaging Yeshua. That statement alone is enough to ban this book and to ban and excommunicate this Rab. And that's exactly what happened. Abraham Abulafia was excommunicated and he was exiled by the rabbinical order in Spain in that generation. He was considered a heretic by almost all of the Orthodox Jews and the rabbinical order in that generation. That's a historical fact. And he was exiled to an island in the Mediterranean that's very near to the same island that Shaul was exiled to, and the same island that Yochanan the Baptist, or Yochanan, the author of the Apocalypse, was exiled to. Are you beginning to see some of the connections? This Rab was so initiated that he was considered a heretic. He was rejected and despised by many Orthodox Jews, Qabbalists, and the rabbinical order in his generation. Why do you think that was? Why do you think that is? Only after the fact is he highly revered and accepted by all the Orthodox Jews and the Qabbalists. But it wasn't so in his generation. So, this is the Grand Seal that this is part of the Grand Seal and part of the code, the secret code embedded within his writings that reveal that he believed in Yeshua as HaMashiach. Moreover, in some of his books, he describes very scary visions that he has. Now, if in the beginning he associated Yeshua HaMashiach with HaSatan, and Yeshua HaMashiach, because of his high initiation, is attempting to reveal himself to him in his dreams and visions, and he doesn't know any better, if he is mistaking his visions of Yeshua HaMashiach with HaSatan, wouldn't that be a cause for his torment? If initially he didn't know any better? It's just a thought to consider. Now I'm going to reveal a very advanced statement that he makes in the same book in page 130. He states, and he's speaking on Pharaoh. He states, Pharaoh was considered the first Elo to all of creation. And this is like the era of the Christians today in the matter of Yeshua, the son of Pandera, which is the mystery of the bastard son of the menstruate. And he is the mystery of the first matter that was the firstborn to all that was created. And because Pharaoh considered this vanity, and he was Elo and the firstborn, it was said to Moshe concerning this, see, I have made the Elohim, Pharaoh, quoting Sefer Shemot chapter 7 verse 1. He was considered Elohim, and he, Mashiach, will stand against him to inform everyone that what was said to the Christians that he is Elo and the son of Elo and Adam was false or a lie. Now we have to properly analyze what he's saying here, because what he is saying here is so advanced that it has gone over the heads of practically all scholars that have quoted these passages, and for sure as hell it's not going to be understood by any Jewish Kabbalist. Okay, what he's saying here is he is essentially likening Yeshua to Pharaoh, and he's saying Pharaoh was the first god. Then he gives a very hyper-literal esoteric translation of Shemot chapter 7 verse 1. He's reading the verse hyper-literally in the Hebrew as, so I have made the Elohim Pharaoh, meaning that the verse is saying that Pharaoh is Elohim. Okay? And so what he's saying is, Yeshua is the firstborn to all creation. Now this is interesting because guess who else says this? Guess what other Kabbalist, Grandmaster Qabbalist, says exactly, almost verbatim what Abraham Abulafia states here regarding Yeshua. Yeah, Shaul the Apostle. In 1 Corinthians, he states that Yeshua HaMashiach is the firstborn to all creation. Did Abraham Abulafia read the New Testament? Did he read Shaul? I don't know. But do you think it's a coincidence that he's almost stating verbatim what Shaul states in 1 Corinthians? So what he's saying here is essentially, yes, Yeshua is the firstborn to all creation. He is primordial matter. The Hillel the Hillel that the ancient Greek sages spoke of. And the issue here is that as a highly initiated Kabbalist, as we all holy adepts and initiates know and understand, is that Yeshua is all the way at the bottom of the Godhead. In other words, there are higher Elohim than Yeshua HaMashiach. And he's saying that the issue here, the error of the Christians, is that they have likened Yeshua to all of Elohim. In other words, the Christians conflate all of the Elohim, or conflate the essence of Elohim, all into Mashiach, into Yeshua. And he's saying your understanding of Yeshua, is incorrect in the sense that, he's all the way at the bottom of the Godhead. There are higher Elohim than him. You're acting like Yeshua is the highest God. Right? But he's not. At least the Christian should know that there's also the Father. The Father ranks higher than the Son. But, at that time and throughout 2,000 years, too many Christians, I think, end up forgetting about the Father because they put so much emphasis and focus on the Son. And so really all he's saying here is that the error of the Christians is that they have glorified Yeshua beyond his rank and stature and essence, not understanding and not knowing of the higher Elohim that stand above him. And do not consider it strange that he states that the fact that the Christians state that he is Elo, or the son of Elo and Adam, is false, because Peter, the chief disciple of Yeshua HaMashiach, explicitly states in the Clementine Homilies, which is a highly Kabbalistic work, he explicitly states that Yeshua is not God. And indeed, as a highly initiated Kabbalist, as a highly, as a high initiate or adept, it should be readily understood and comprehended that indeed, Mashiach is not God. We may paradoxically state that, yes, he is God and he is not God. He is God to the laity, but he is not God to the initiates and adepts. In the same manner that God is a man to the laity, but he is not a man to the initiates and the adepts. So this is what Abraham Abulafia is stating here in this passage, underscoring the fact that Abraham Abulafia is a ridiculously highly initiated Kabbalist. Probably too initiated for even most Kabbalists to understand, to be quite honest. Now, let us go over some of the negative statements, because we can't simply dismiss these negative statements, okay? In the same book, in Sefer Matiach HaChochmoth, or the Key to Wisdoms, in page 64 to 65, he states, the serpent is Mashiach. He was wise or subtle. Wisdom/craftiness is from Yeshu. Wisdom/craftiness and black magic, and therefore he was cursed. Then in page 125 he states, Yeshu and Miriam are the strange Elohim. And in his book Gan Naul, in page 49, he has this Kabbalistic expression, which is a permutation. In other words, in Hebrew, the man is his staff, maybe the letters of the expression, the man in his staff, may be permuted to read, Yeshu is impure. Okay, here he's making a very great Kabbalistic statement here in regards to Moshe's staff becoming a serpent, right? Because in the first statement here where he says the serpent is Mashiach, he understands that in Gematria, the Hebrew word serpent is equivalent to Mashiach. If you watch my other videos, you've seen this, you know this, that the Gematria of serpent is equivalent to Mashiach, giving us a mystical equation between the serpent and the Mashiach. He, as an advanced Kabbalist, understands and knows this very well. And so here he says, well, the serpent, which is Mashiach, was wise, and so was Yeshua. Yeshua is the serpent, who is Mashiach, who is wise or crafty. Essentially, that's what he's stating in that statement. Okay, now, we need to understand that, yes, Abraham Abulafia makes a number of disparaging statements in regards to Yeshua and Mashiach, but as a very crafty and subtle Jew, because most of us very sagacious, perspicacious, intellectual, Kabbalistic Jews like myself are just known for being very crafty and very subtle, right? You know, most Jews are known, you know, most of the Gentiles have this stereotype of Jews that we are very crafty, we are very subtle, and indeed we are. You know, our father, Mashiach, Yeshua, said, be ye wise as serpents. Just like the serpent was very wise and crafty in the Garden of Eden, he wants us to be very wise and crafty just like our enemy, the serpent. Okay? And so as such, yes, even though Abraham Abulafia makes disparaging statements in regards to Yeshua, actually, they can all be reconciled. I have read all of the disparaging statements he has made in his books, in the original Hebrew. And as I was reading and meditating on these passages in their true original essence and form, as he probably penned them, it occurred to me very easily that I can easily reconcile all of these statements. And this all goes back to what I said earlier, that Abraham Abulafia wrote in code. It was he followed the very advanced esoteric Kabbalistic method of operation that all Kabbalists have followed for generations, which on one level ends up confusing the laity and the masses, right? The masses were confused as to what Yeshua said. They didn't fully understand him. Some even thought he was a heretic because of this. Same thing with Shaul. According to Abraham Abulafia, the same thing happened with Rambam, and Abraham Abulafia employed the same methods. So as a standard average Jewish Kabbalist reading his works, I'm going to be freaking confused. I'm going to be like, okay, over here, you make, 10 disparaging statements against Yeshua, but then you make this out of this world preposterous, powerful divine statement that Yeshua is Mashiach. And that he's equated, and you're equating him with the Godhead, the Tetragrammaton of all things. What am I supposed to believe? You're confusing me, Abraham Abulafia. You are confusing me. Your statements are confusing. You're contradicting yourself. This is what any Jewish Kabbalist, average Jewish Kabbalist in his works, this is what be going through his mind. And there are many scholars that have written books upon this, and their conclusions are inconclusive. They don't know what to make of it because they're scholars, they're not Kabbalists, they don't know any better. The best they can do is just give the citations and have inconclusive conclusions. Quite pitiful if you ask me. I can reconcile all of these statements very easily, okay? Yeshua and Miriam are strange Elohim. Well, yeah, to the Jew, Yeshua is a strange God, or likened them to a strange God, obviously. And the statement that wisdom and black magic stem from Yeshua, well, that word there, the Hebrew word there for black magic, can also just be read as magic, just meaning white magic or plain magic. We must not forget that Daniel was explicitly called the chief magician of Babylon. It was magicians that came and visited and gave gifts to Yeshua HaMashiach. I myself, a holy saint, am the chief magician of Mystery Babylon. So in light of all of this, that statement can be reconciled, right? the man and his staff, Yeshua, is impure. Well, Yeshua is impure in the sense that he is enveloped by the klipoth. Any Kabbalist knows this. This is the secret of Yaakov being covered by the garments of Esau, which represent the klipoth. From an external perspective, Yeshua appears to be impure. But from an internal perspective, we know he is holy. Again, all of his disparaging statements can be reconciled. Okay? Meaning that, again, Abraham Abulafia is following the very esoteric method of Kabbalistic method of operation, whereby which his writings are encoded and encrypted. Meaning that most people who read his works will be led to believe that he is anti-Yeshua, contradicting himself at best. But in reality, those who are initiated at the highest levels will know that indeed he is pro-Yeshua. This is the reason why many of his disciples converted to Christianity. They knew the truth. Why did all of his disciples openly convert to Christianity? Why do you think that is? Let's not get stupid here, okay? And that leads me to the next slide. Now I'm going to give you one of the teachings from one of his disciples, okay? One of his disciples writes in a book called Sefer Hagdama, he states, "What I am about to reveal to you is one of the most hidden matters. God forbid if the nation of Edom were to know of it." Edom is a Kabbalistic word for Christianity. He's saying, "I'm about to reveal to you is so secret, we cannot have the Christians get a hold of this. We can't have them know this." What is it? Know that the sixth day in Hebrew has the same gematria as Yeshua the HaNatzeri, and he is the active force within half of the divine name Yah. This is powerful. This is an extension of that grand seal that I read to you from Abraham Abulafia's treatise. Now here his disciple is saying, we can't have the Christians know this, that we believe in Yeshua, that we know the secrets about Yeshua, that we know what's going on. Here, Yeshua is being equated with the sixth day, which is the ninth emanation in the Sfirot, which is Yesod. And I just read to you way earlier from one of the passages of Rab Moshe David Vaya, where he actually states that Yeshua's root and source is in the Sfira Yesod. Well, we're all highly initiated Kabbalists here. We all know that its root and source is in Yesod. That's what the sixth day represents. Yes, the sixth day represents Yesod. Even more powerful is the fact that he equates Yeshua with the first half of the Tetragrammaton. In HaKabbalah, the first half of the Tetragrammaton is greater than the last half of the Tetragrammaton. Understand, this is a very powerful statement that is being made by one of his disciples, who I'm pretty sure ended up converting to Christianity and believed in Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay? And this passage was taken, by the way, from Moshe Idel, from one of his writings called Abulafia on the Jewish Mashiach and Jesus, because again, there are scholars that have analyzed, these passages that I'm revealing here, and much of the other works of Abraham Abulafia. Okay, but again, these scholars, much of their findings are inconclusive because they're not highly initiated Kabbalists like myself. They don't have a full understanding of what's really going on here. Okay, this is the inferiority of the scholars. This is why they are inferior to the true masters like myself. Okay, so let us then review some of the key takeaways from this Grand Seal. Okay, essentially, what Abraham Abulafia and his disciples are stating is that Yeshua is indeed HaMashiach. They're equating Yeshua with the sixth day, which is Adam Kadmon, okay, which represents the Sfira Yesod, which is holy, by the way. They're equating Yeshua with Yah, the first half of the Tetragrammaton, and in HaKabbalah, Yah is greater than Wa, which is the last part of the Tetragrammaton. Okay, and this is what makes Abraham Abulafia's seal even more confusing, because in his seal he states that, you know, Yeshua is equated with the 6th day. That is, Mashiach ben Yosef is equated with the 6th day, but Mashiach ben Dawid is equated with the 7th day. This is very confusing and incorrect, because the 6th day or the 6th emanation is greater than the 7th day or the 7th emanation. And the first half of the Tetragrammaton Yah is greater than the last half of the Tetragrammaton Wa. So essentially, based on his own logic, it logically follows that the logical conclusion to his own logic is that Yeshua is Mashiach ben Dawid, or the greater Mashiach, than the other king Mashiach that he speaks of. All in all, it can be very confusing if you really think about it, if you really understand the matter and its essence. But again, it doesn't matter. The point here, the grand point here, is that Yeshua is HaMashiach. Essentially, in his writings, he is implying that Yeshua is Mashiach ben Yosef. When you get down to the essence of the matter, what Abraham Abulafia is really implicitly saying is that Mashiach is, that Yeshua is Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay, so hopefully you have eyes to see and ears to hear this great concealed mystery that I have revealed here. Okay, because there are practically all the modern Orthodox Jews and Kabbalists highly revere and highly revere Abraham Abulafia as one of the greatest, most initiated Kabbalists. He is in fact one of the most studied Kabbalists of all of the Jewish Kabbalists and Orthodox Jews. And why haven't any of them addressed this? Why is this issue not being addressed? It's very clear from his writings that Yeshua is HaMashiach. Why haven't they addressed this? Is it because it is an inconvenient truth? Are they just simply hiding it under the rug? What are they thinking? Do they not understand that he was a full-blown exiled, excommunicated heretic in his generation? Do they not understand why? All I can say is that this is a testament to the foolishness, to the ignorance, and to the spiritual blindness of many of these self-acclaimed Jewish Kabbalists in this generation and in the previous generations, who haven't properly addressed this issue. Amen wa shalom.